Raymond William Stacy Burr was born on May 21, 1917, in New Westminster, British Columbia, and his early life was shaped by instability and responsibility far beyond his years. After his parents divorced, Burr moved with his mother to Vallejo, California, where financial hardship became a constant reality. He left school at just 17 to help support his family, working a range of physically demanding and uncertain jobs, including ranch hand, traveling salesman, and nightclub singer. These formative years instilled in him a strong work ethic and self-reliance, but they also planted the seeds of emotional guardedness. Burr learned early that survival required discipline and control, lessons that would later define both his professional excellence and his personal isolation. Even as a young man, he showed signs of ambition and creative drive, quietly nurturing an interest in acting while managing the weight of adult responsibility before truly having a chance to be young. Finding his voice and place in Hollywood. Burr's passion for acting eventually led him to the Pasadena Playhouse, one of Hollywood's most respected training grounds, where his natural authority and commanding presence quickly stood out. Standing over 6 feet tall with a deep, resonant voice, Burr possessed a physicality that casting directors found both compelling and intimidating. Throughout the 1940s, he built a steady career in radio and film, often portraying villains or morally complex figures. These roles, while limiting in type, allowed him to hone a powerful screen presence and master subtle emotional control. Burr worked tirelessly, appearing in dozens of films and gaining the respect of peers for his professionalism. Yet the success came at a cost. He remained cautious with colleagues, rarely allowing personal relationships to deepen. Hollywood rewarded his intensity on screen, but off-screen, Burr remained distant, quietly protecting his private life in an industry that demanded constant exposure. Stardom arrives with Perry Mason. In 1957, Raymond Burr's career reached unprecedented heights when he was cast as Perry Mason, the principal defense attorney who would become one of television's most enduring characters. Burr approached the role with seriousness and discipline, studying legal procedures to lend authenticity to Mason's courtroom brilliance. The series became a cultural phenomenon, running for 9 seasons and earning Burr 2 Emmy Awards. Viewers admired Mason's calm authority, moral clarity, and relentless pursuit of justice, qualities Burr embodied effortlessly. Financial success followed, making Burr one of television's highest-paid actors. However, the demands of the role were intense, and Burr's commitment to perfection often led to tension behind the scenes. While his leadership elevated the show's quality, it also reinforced his reputation as controlling and uncompromising. The very traits that made him successful on screen began to distance him from colleagues, quietly narrowing his circle of trust. Creative control and growing distance. As Burr's influence grew, so did his insistence on creative control. On Perry Mason, and later Ironside, he weighed in heavily on scripts, casting choices, and production decisions. While many admired his dedication, others found him difficult to challenge. Burr believed strongly in protecting the integrity of his work, but his refusal to bend sometimes created lasting rifts. Over time, friendships strained under the weight of disagreements that might have been resolved with compromise. Burr also avoided Hollywood's social scene, preferring solitude to industry networking. To some, his distance felt like disinterest or mistrust. To Burr, it was self-preservation. As years passed, his professional circle increasingly consisted of employees rather than equals, reinforcing a quiet loneliness. The man celebrated for portraying justice and wisdom on screen was slowly becoming isolated, not through cruelty, but through a rigid need to maintain control over both his work and his life. Love, privacy, and a carefully guarded life. Raymond Burr valued privacy with near absolute devotion. His brief marriage to actress Isabella Ward ended quietly, and afterward he chose to keep his personal life firmly out of public view. During an era when deviation from social norms could end careers, Burr constructed a carefully managed public image, offering limited personal details and avoiding invasive questions. He later shared his life with a long-term partner, building a stable domestic world centered on shared interests and mutual support. Rather than public acknowledgement, Burr chose discretion, a decision shaped by the realities of his time. While this protected his career, it also created emotional distance. Friends often felt they never truly knew him. Burr's secrecy was not rooted in deception, but in fear and caution. Yet the emotional cost was real. The walls he built for safety slowly became barriers that kept others out, leaving him increasingly alone. A generous spirit with costly consequences. Despite his reserved nature, Burr was remarkably generous. He donated to charities, supported humanitarian projects, and frequently helped friends and strangers alike with medical bills and financial assistance. His compassion extended internationally, funding schools, hospitals, and agricultural ventures. However, Burr showed little interest in financial oversight. He trusted others to manage his wealth and invested heavily in properties and projects driven more by passion than practicality. Estates in California, ventures in Fiji, vineyards and plantations demanded enormous upkeep. For years, his television income sustained these ambitions, but expenses quietly mounted. Burr gave freely, often without limits, believing money should be used to help others. Unfortunately, generosity without restraint proved unsustainable. As acting opportunities slowed later in life, the financial structure collapsed under its own weight. Burr's fortune dwindled not from excess alone, but from kindness unbalanced by caution, leaving him financially vulnerable. The return of Perry Mason and mounting pressure. In the mid-1980s, Burr returned to his most famous role through a series of Perry Mason television movies. While warmly received by audiences, these productions were also financially necessary. Maintaining his properties and commitments required steady income, and Burr continued working despite declining health. The pressure to remain active weighed heavily on him, though he rarely complained. He maintained professionalism on set, even as the industry around him changed and longtime colleagues faded from his life. By this stage, Burr's social world had grown small, shaped by years of distance and unresolved tensions. Though respected, he was no longer closely connected. The revival of Perry Mason offered purpose, structure, and a sense of continuity, but it could not restore what had been lost emotionally or financially. Burr remained dignified and committed, quietly carrying burdens that few fully understood: illness, withdrawal, and quiet strength. In 1993, Burr was diagnosed with kidney cancer, a battle he chose to keep largely private. Following surgery, it became clear that the illness had progressed beyond initial expectations. Despite increasing weakness, Burr continued working, completing his final Perry Mason film with determination and grace. Those close to him noticed the toll, though he refused to let pain define his final chapter. As his health declined, Burr withdrew further, limiting visitors and conserving his energy. This withdrawal was not rejection, but reflection. He focused on peace, familiarity, and the comfort of his home in Sonoma County. The isolation that had shaped much of his life returned in full, now accompanied by physical fragility. Yet even in illness, Burr remained composed, choosing dignity over spectacle. His strength was quiet, rooted in endurance rather than display, a final testament to the discipline that had defined him since youth. Farewells and reconciliation. As the end approached, Raymond Burr surprised many by hosting small farewell gatherings, choosing celebration over sorrow. These moments were filled with stories, laughter, and gratitude, offering closure to relationships that had endured distance and misunderstanding. Burr expressed appreciation for those who had stood by him, acknowledging both shared successes and silent struggles. These gatherings reflected a softer side rarely seen publicly, a man aware of his flaws and the passage of time. Though many friendships had faded, the affection that remained was sincere. Burr's life had been shaped by caution, control, and generosity, sometimes in conflict with one another. In these final moments, he allowed himself openness, offering warmth without reservation. The guarded actor who had spent decades protecting his narrative chose honesty in farewell, leaving behind not bitterness, but reflection, grace, and a quiet reconciliation with the life he had lived. Legacy of talent, complexity, and humanity. Raymond Burr passed away on September 12, 1993, at his Sonoma County ranch, leaving behind a legacy defined by extraordinary talent and human complexity. To audiences, he remains the embodiment of justice through Perry Mason and resilience through Ironside. Behind the roles was a man shaped by hardship, caution, generosity, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. He lost friends not through malice, but through self-protection, and lost wealth not through greed, but through unguarded kindness. Burr's story is not one of tragedy, but of consequence, illustrating how survival strategies can both protect and isolate. His life reflects the cost of living carefully in an unforgiving era, and the quiet courage required to endure it. In remembering Raymond Burr, we honor not only an icon of television, but a deeply human figure whose strengths and struggles remain profoundly relatable.